Does. Well, we're going to start off with the MHRA, so let's bring them on screen. Here they are. They have issued a press release, effectively, UK clinical trials regulation overhauled. They're saying that these changes to clinical trials regulations represent the biggest overhaul in UK clinical trials regulation over 20 years. They're saying that under the new framework, clinical trials application processes in the UK will be more proportionate, streamlined, and flexible. And they claim that this is without compromising on safety. That's going to help to cement the UK as an attractive destination for pharma companies to hold their trials, including global multi-site trials. They say, for example, the integration of the regulatory and ethics reviews of clinical trial applications, which in pilot phase halved the approval times for studies and cut the time for application to recruiting a first patient by 40 days, will be embedded in new regulations, and this is going to be in the form of legislation. On transparency, they say the framework will introduce a legal mandate to register the trial on a World Health Organization public register and a requirement to publish a summary of the results within 12 months of the end of the trials. So Steve Barclay was very excited about this. This is what he had to say. These changes will help speed up clinical trials without compromising on safety and encourage the development of new and better medicines for patients. They come after the government announced an additional funding of £10 million for the MHRA to accelerate the delivery of cutting-edge treatments, including cancer vaccines. So, Debbie, maybe I could ask you, first of all, what your thoughts are.
My thoughts immediately go to the 100-day mission. They immediately go to the MHRA board meeting, of which we'll come to in just a minute. And exactly what's being said there, the MHRA cutting edge treatments for cancer victims will be looking at cancer vaccines as a matter of course. So a lot to take out of that. But the one important word, I think, was integration. And I think you're going to hear that word more and more often, including in today's news.
Okay, brilliant. So let's move on then, Debbie, beginning with the Daily Mail, or the Daily Express, sorry. We're talking about justice for the forgotten victims of COVID jabs.
Yes, now this was very interesting. This was last Wednesday's Express. As you can see, I've taken a screenshot there of the front page. So they did a double page spread on the Wednesday, and they also did a double page spread. They featured Peter Todd, who we've interviewed before, giving comments. And then on the Wednesday, and I don't have a screenshot of it, I'm sorry, but we did have our wonderful Dr. Christian Buckland also being put in comments in the Express. So delighted to see that at last the mainstream media are picking up on this, and it's all good hard work to UK CV family who have been doggedly, and VIB who have been doggedly trying to raise awareness. So that's really, really good news. So I'm delighted with that. Next,
Debbie,
I'd like to
Debbie, can I just
sorry.
before you move on, could I just mention that yesterday on the UK column Twitter feed, we pushed out a little Twitter thread on the issue of the vaccine injured and really asking about the silence of the majority of MPs. So I just want to, before you move on, just mention that and encourage anybody that's on Twitter to get onto the UK column Twitter feed and start pushing that around, because really we should be putting more pressure on MPs at this stage, Debbie.
Yeah, we absolutely should. And actually, that brings me on to a very important point, because we're in regular contact with Sir Christopher Chope, and he's asked us to remind everybody that on Friday, the 24th of March, so that's this Friday, there's an adjournment debate on the Vaccine Damage Payment Act 1979 taking place. So really important we carry on informing our MPs what is going on, even if they don't want to hear us. We have to keep on at them. But that just brings us nicely on to the MHRA. And you might remember that last week I mentioned a paper. I got very excited about a paper that had been sent to me. Looking at the paper, actually, we found out that it had come from 2005. Now, this was a select committee on health, the fourth report. And I think the fact that it comes from 2005 makes it even worse. I'll let everybody screenshot, because I know that we're a bit tight for time. But just one of the points there, point 8, the pharmaceutical industry's promotional efforts are relentless and pervasive. The evidence presented showed the lengths to which the industry goes to ensure that promotional messages reach their targets, and that these targets include not only prescribing groups, but patients and the general public. This was in 2005. And the next shot is really just a couple more points from that same paper. I'd encourage everybody to go and have a look at that 2005 paper, because it's clear that nobody has taken any notice of it. None of those recommendations have been looked at. And it even says there in point 36, we recommend that there be an independent review of the MHRA. In point 48, it says that the interests of the pharmaceutical industry should be moved into the remit of the Department of Trade and Industry. Clearly, we know they're still in the Department of Health. So please go and have a look at that document 2005. Staying on the MHRA, of course, it was my favourite time of the year or of the 3 months, and that was the MHRA board meeting, which took place yesterday. And there you can see a screenshot of the front cover of what we get to see when we're joining an MHRA board meeting. Now, what was said in the MHRA board meeting? Well, this is exclusive. I have to say that all that we're going to show you today regarding the MHRA and with our 2 VIP guests is exclusive. So please share this, because it's very, very important. So at the board meeting, the first thing that happens really is June Rain gives her report. So luckily I recorded it. So let's have a look and see what June Rain said.
Well, thank you. And I think it's clear to the board from what you've read in the report that it has continued to be a tremendously busy time for the agency as we maintain our emphasis on robust science, on being proactive and future focused, and obviously collaboration is a key theme. So perhaps just to bring out 1 or 2 key messages on science, research and innovation, we're looking ahead to the flu vaccines that will be needed for the coming year. And after the WHO decision, we've been working with the WHO laboratory network to provide the reagents for manufacturers to ensure that we do have effective vaccines for the next flu season. Still with vaccines, but cancer vaccines. These have shown very promising signs in initial trials, and the potential is there to on-site manufacture for patients to have the vaccine as quickly as possible if this early promise is realised. So a new approach to regulation may be required, and we're working across the agency on a new pathway. The Innovation Accelerator team is continuing looking at how well we approach horizon scanning. And I think if board agrees, it might be a good topic for a future board meeting. Turning to our focus on access, healthcare access is our key deliverable, and different kinds of products now coming into the frame. Our software and AI team, together with the Clinical Practice Research Data Link, have been working on in silico trial approaches. So a new avenue to support the regulation of these really innovative products with a great potential to improve healthcare. And we, of course, have a multi-agency advisory service, which brings in CQC, the Care Quality Commission, and NICE and the Health Research Authority. But close to home, maintaining supply of medicines is always something we look ahead to do, working with the Department of Health and Social Care. And our teams have been expediting changes to licenses to make sure that supplies are maintained. Of course, as the board knows, patient safety is our top priority, and colleagues will have noted that just last week there was a major review of cough and cold medicines, which contain an ingredient, volcadine, that's been linked with very rare allergic reactions to an anesthetic relaxant, to a muscle relaxant used in anesthesia. And therefore, a very precautionary step was taken right down to wholesalers and pharmacies to remove these medicines. So people can be very confident when they go and purchase a cough and cold medicine. Our dynamic organisation, of course, is very well aware of areas where performance needs to be optimised, and we're working in parallel on transforming services, particularly in these areas. But taking staff into the thinking on all of this, we had an all-staff meeting last month, which was co-designed with our staff partnership group, and that made a very big difference to that feeling of engagement and getting to grips with things as an agency. So, Stephen, I will finish, I think, intensive work ongoing, very attentive to the need to optimise services, but obviously patient safety is our top priority. And all of this depends on the really superb efforts and commitment of our staff.
Debbie, I noticed she used the term improve healthcare, not improve health. She's not interested in health outcomes, she's interested in improving the industry.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, she made so many points there, but the one thing that I did take away from the MHRA, well, there's a few things, but one of the things was they'll be talking about avian flu a lot, and they're clearly rolling out flu jabs. And also the Folcadine mention, I just want to say, I made a little bit of a slip of the tongue last week. I do apologise. I've put my explanation and correction in my blog this week, but Folcadine is something we're going to be looking at in the future. She also said that patient safety was the top priority. Well, I've yet to see evidence of any of that, quite honestly. But
Debbie,
sorry, Brian. Yeah.
If I may just come in there. Well, of course, she said that if it's a cough and cold medicine, they're going to drill down and be monitoring patient safety right down to the local shop that's selling it. They're going to deal with the problem. But if it's a vaccine, we know they're simply not interested in patient safety. So what's this lady suffering from? Cognitive dissonance, or is she an idiot? I've got to use that term because what's being presented is just madness.
Well, I think you're going to see some evidence of that now, actually, because the MHRA, they're a bit sloppy, because had they done due diligence and had they done their research, they would have seen, or at least known, that the guest that they'd invited to ask a public question was actually one of the friends of the UK column and someone we've interviewed already. And Cheryl Grainger, who many of our regular audience may remember seeing, as she submitted an amazing FOI to AstraZeneca, and we interviewed her. And we always ask our UK column viewers to join the board meetings when they can and to put appropriate questions in. And one of Cheryl's questions got received and accepted, but she was sent terms and conditions, would you believe? Now, we haven't seen this before. So these are the MHRA terms and conditions that Cheryl was sent. Now, the two that are underlined in red are the ones that she felt were particularly worrying. Those are: these media and content files may be altered or edited in any way the MHRA finds appropriate, and these media or content may be used to depict an imaginary person. Now, Cheryl, I know, checked this with a solicitor and was told to return it with both of those clauses crossed out and to see what happened. And, well, let's see what happened at the MHRA board meeting.
Why has one of the most important regulatory activities, pharmacovigilance, especially over a period of 2 years of multiple injections given to millions of people, has there been a reduction or curtailment of rapid cycle analysis, ecological analysis, target active monitoring, yellow card monitoring, and then the listings of the freedom of information requests and responses received?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Can I ask our Chief Safety Officer, Alison Cave, to maybe respond to that?
Yeah, and thanks very much, Ms Grainger, for your question. I think maybe there's a little bit of background. As Ms Grainger notes, at the start of the pandemic, the MHRA implemented a very robust 4-stranded strategy for the monitoring of the COVID-19 vaccines. And as you've noted, that includes enhanced passive surveillance, rapid cycle analysis, and active surveillance approach. And as well as that, the launching of, where we can, formal epidemiological studies. And we also did extensive engagement with academia and the international regulatory network to really source additional data as the deployment of the vaccines rolled out. I think what you're referring to is that after 2 years now of regularly publishing a report which summarises the MHRA's safety assessments on the COVID-19 vaccines used in the UK, in line with the advice of the CHM, and in the light of a very stable vaccine profile, a very stable safety profile of the vaccines, we've now transitioned, in the context of that report, to a routine safety publication and communication of any safety concerns for a vaccine as required, rather than publishing a regular narrative report. But what I really want to emphasise is that the robust safety monitoring and surveillance of any COVID-19 vaccines that are under deployment will continue, and the full range of the tools that you've outlined is still available to us should we see any change in the safety profile of the vaccines that may concern us. We're also continuing to do a regular publication of any suspected adverse reactions for the COVID-19 vaccines authorised in the UK, and we've recently launched a new interactive analysis print in line with approaches for other medicines. So that gives members of the public and industry and anybody who's interested an ability to look at those reports and tailor them to areas that they may be specifically interested in. Just with regard to your second point, with regard to publishing of freedom of information responses, that is indeed an important part of a commitment, and we do acknowledge there has been a gap in publication, and we're working very hard to catch up that with publishing of responses due to resume this week. And we are currently reviewing our resource requirements in that area to ensure that we do deliver on the commitments there and that the publication is kept up to date over the course of the next years. So thank you very much for your question. I hope that provides your reassurance.
Okay. So can I just check, Cheryl, that provides the information you asked?
Yes, there's just many concerns out there regarding the adverse event reports that we've had so far. So at the moment, there's about 1 in 426 doses that's bringing a serious adverse event. And I'm trying to find out more information about that as to why that's not being investigated a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I think what we shouldn't start doing is actually using this as an opportunity to talk around all the specific details there. But again, just in response to that, Alison, is there anything else that you want to add there?
Just to reassure that every single serious adverse event to a vaccine is interrogated and considered and analysed extremely carefully. And I think that if anybody looks at the narrative report that we've been publishing over the last 2 years, you can see, I hope, the huge attention to detail and careful analysis of every single report that comes through. Is incredibly important that we reassure the public and maintain the trust of the public in our surveillance of these vaccines. And it has been a huge effort over the last 2 years to ensure that we do understand the safety profile of the vaccine and that the benefit risk of those vaccines remains positive.
Okay.